Hi. Something like 2,400 years ago, Plato wrote that our need will be the great creator. Over the years, this phrase, this saying, has become known to us as necessity is the mother of invention. Now, nothing in recent history has taught us that more than the coronavirus and the pandemic that has absolutely smashed into our social, economic, employment cultures like nothing that any of us alive have ever experienced before. It has made it that we've had to think of our way through things, and one of those things is the notion of the way we work flexibly. Now, it's not the flexible working and working from home, for example, is a brand new concept. It's been around for some while and people have been doing it for quite a time. I, of course, work from home because basically I don't work for any particular person at the moment, although I've spent a lot of time working for organisations, councils, companies. For each of those over the past 20 or 30 years, I have had periods of working from home, sometimes to work on a project for some while, and sometimes a day a week. And these things offer a great deal of work-life balance, and a lot of organisations, companies and people in the past few months have found that this has been of some advantage to them. But all of these things have consequences, and the consequence of a lot of us working from home that used to work in city centre offices and so on has been that it's had a negative impact on those city centre economies. And this has prompted to some degree the government in this past week really pushing for people to go back to work, in the offices. Now, I mentioned this because I'm going to come on to furlough leave in a moment, but I'm talking in the first instance about the working from home and more importantly, generally flexible working. It's proved to be doable that a lot of people work from home, but months ago when this first started, I pointed out quite a number of downsides to working from home as well as the upsides. Now, the upsides being that people can continue to work, they can continue to be productive. Quite often, they are more productive than before. They are able to balance their lives a little better. They're able to work different kinds of hours. They don't go out to work in their cars. They're not driving anywhere, and therefore their carbon footprint is improved. They're not getting on congested transport and spreading any illness, public transport that is, and spreading any illness, and so things in general get better. But the downside, of course, is that public transport has suffered in terms of its revenues because people have not been going to work. The downside that I've already mentioned before about city centre economies, all the sandwich shops and the other business that occurs as people pop out on their lunch or when they finish work, maybe go for a little social activity around town. All those city centre and town centre economies are going to be hit by people working from home. And what I've encouraged from the start is to look at how we can balance working from home with working from an office so that there are less people in the office, but we continue working in the office because there is an importance to the social aspect of working with other people. We are by nature social animals and we kind of need the company of others. If you are sat at home and you live alone, then you become increasingly isolated. There are potential mental health, emotional health impacts of working from home. I've given other examples over time, the impact that it could have on people who are experiencing domestic violence at home, for example. For them to be contained at home and working gives them no escape from that situation. And so I think that work and having workplaces has a lot of value. But going back to the Plato example, one of the ways that Plato explained things is by using Socratic methodology, and that was to consider the consequence. Think of an idea, think that that's a good idea and explore that idea through to its natural consequences. Now, one of the consequences of us not going into workplaces is that a new generation of workers, the people that have just done the GCSEs and their A levels or just graduated from university, will they have less aspect to that work-based culture. So, for instance, something like 61% of employers have cut back or even eliminated things like work experience programs. So young people have not had access to employment before going into employment. Internships, work experience programs have suffered as a direct consequence of the COVID-19 situation. And that makes it that we are effectively giving a little bit of a choke to the pipeline of new talent coming into employment. People that have skills that are not going into work, people that have knowledge that are not going into work, are therefore not able to share that experience and that knowledge with new people coming into work. So how do we conduct things like apprenticeships and traineeships with people that are not going into a workplace? So I'm all for us going back to work, but not in the sense that we all go back en masse. The consequence of us going back en masse means that we've got a situation where public transport will again be congested. Now, if you go out onto a public road now, you will see buses going by very much more than half empty, with signs on the front saying bus full, social distancing. So how are we going to get back into those city centres without congesting the roads and not using public transport, which will not be able to cope with that? We've got to think consequences of our actions. We've got to think these things through. So when we're thinking about our employment and our culture, we need to think through what we're going to do about getting people to work, and think about the health and safety of those people in work, as well as thinking how we're going to manage. Now, the thing is that there are a lot of advantages from working from home. And going back to that notion of necessity being the mother of invention, we need to think, well, how are we going to do things now? How are we going to make it that we balance those local economies, those city centre economies, town centre economies, with our needs and our health and safety needs, and getting people back into work, and for all the things that are beneficial to that, and including developing new talent by enabling young people to come into the workplace for work experience, get to know working culture, get to understand what it's like, and start developing their talents and their knowledge and growing them as the next generation. Now, just briefly, on furlough, this is really important. Furlough, as we've said, is coming to the end of October. The government at the moment is saying that it's not going to be extended. Definitely not going to be extended. Now, they're mixing and matching the furlough with working from home and so on. They're two separate things. People working from home have not been furloughed. They're continuing to work from home. And when they say that the furlough scheme is going to end at the end of October, and they say they mean it, I do take that with a pinch of salt, given the amount of U-turns that have happened over the past few weeks and months. However, I would work on the assumption that it is going to end at that time. And this is going to impact massively, because the furlough scheme was not about enabling people to work from home. It was about supporting people that would have lost their jobs. It was about supporting the economy so that the people that were not able to work were able to at least have some income and be able to afford to go out and spend that income on things like their rent, their mortgage, their food, and so on and so forth. If we look at the massive unemployment that would come as a result of the redundancies at the end of the furlough scheme, we've got to think, again, consequences on our business. People are not working, people are not buying. That is just a simple fact of a depressed economy. Now, we have to start thinking more flexibly. I've said this many, many times before. When we're thinking about flexibility, and when we come into the end of the furlough, we're going to start thinking redundancy. Lots of large businesses have been doing this for some while now. Now we in the smaller business sectors have got to start thinking, are we going to need to go into redundancies? And when we start thinking that, we should start thinking, how are we going to avoid them? The whole consultation process is designed in order to look for ways of not undertaking redundancies, not how to undertake redundancies with impunity. So let's get our minds working on this. Our needs will be the creator. Necessity is the mother of invention. Thank you for watching. I hope to speak to you soon. Bye. Hi, just want to make a quick qualification on something that I said in the video about the impact of coronavirus on economic and employment cultures, social cultures, as being the biggest in the lifetime of all of those that are living today. That is not exactly the case, in that the Second World War occurred in the lives of many people who are living today, including my parents, and that clearly had something of a massive impact, which should go without saying. However, I don't want it to be misinterpreted that I didn't consider that. Also, the Great Depression occurred in their lifetime as well, that they were only young when that was in place. And since that time, there have been a lot of international political and economic crises, including things like the oil crisis of the 1970s. And we've had all sorts of economic crashes, including 1989. These things happen and they are recoverable. The thing about the COVID-19 pandemic is that it is one of the biggest things that's happened in everyone's lives, and it's certainly the biggest thing that's happened in just about everyone who's working today's life. And so this is something of massive importance, and I just wanted to put that into context. Cheers. Bye-bye.